My name is Jane Lacey. I'm here with my colleague and friend, Dave DeBrant. I started 7 years ago with Amazon Public Sector. My job was to get contracts. We had 0 in 2012. So we worked real hard, achieved quite a few contract pathways, most of which are run by or awarded by our partners. So 3 years into that gig, my boss said, why don't you go run emerging partners? So now I take care of developing partners into our public sector ecosystem, whether they're coming from the commercial side of the house and want to learn how to do business in government, we teach them that, or they're coming from old school IT where they've got the earned trust of the customer but they don't know this AWS thing. So my team develops them for their AWS technology skills. So we really appreciate you taking the time after lunch to come listen to Dave and myself. Dave looks at procurement from an international flavor.
Yes, yeah. So I've been here 5 years. I've had the honor of actually doing state and local, and then somehow I morphed over into international. So I lead up a team of capture managers. So we work with governments around the world to help them understand how to buy AWS and what the proper ways and all the details and the nuances and the different way of doing things. So I am on planes to India and Brazil and all sorts of different places doing the same thing that we've been doing in the United States. So,
awesome.
Different perspective, but
different perspective.
Things.
So we're going to kind of come at it just as we're going to do a couple. We want to know who our audience is, right? And I know my whole team's here. Thank you very much. Just from an audience perspective, how many of you work internationally? Anybody internationally? Yes, we have one. A couple more. Awesome. So Dave gets to talk. Otherwise, we were going to boot him off. How many are AWS partners today in the room? Awesome, fantastic. Okay, and everybody in the room has an AWS account and has utilized a service at least, at minimum? Yeah? Okay, that's mandatory. You can't come in the room unless you have your 12-digit account number, okay?
And one more is, how many folks are government versus partner?
Fantastic.
Okay. All right, great.
Okay. So in addition to my team that's here, and they will be available in the back of the room or just outside the room when we finish, because we know that you'll probably have a few questions afterwards. I've also invited our contracts team, Stephanie Scarangella and her team back there. They'll also hang behind as well to answer some really tough contracts questions, because I know you'll catch me up quick that I can't answer something, but their team is awesome at that. Also, our AWS Marketplace team is somewhere in the room. Yes, Mr. Matt is here. Marketplace is essential to all things, all right? So we'll talk a little bit about Marketplace in the presentation, but by all means, Matt's available to speak to you about that. So let's get started. Anything else we want to know about our audience?
No, that's good.
Okay, perfect. The net is, we got contract pathways, right? We don't need any more RFPs, although Dave's team would be out of a job if we didn't continue to do RFPs. So those will always happen. We realize that. But we have a very robust capture organization within our public sector group that's out there shaping the opportunities with government, education, nonprofit, even publishers now we work with in public sector. We want to shape those opportunities so that if we can avoid it going out to bid, we do. We still want to have that fair competition with our customers. But the cloud thing, it is kind of a challenge from a procurement perspective. There's not necessarily an apples to apples compare to other cloud environments. So the presentation today is really about the lessons that we have learned, because we all came from old school IT, things that we have learned, best practices that we've put into play to help you to either write a procurement, shape a procurement, respond to a procurement, or avoid it and use a contract that's already available. So cloud computing is different. It's using the cloud often requires a fundamental shift in thinking. This means moving away from traditional ways of using technology, and procurement is obviously a key part of this shift. How many of you are still buying or selling cloud via an old IT contract? Yeah, okay, so be prepared. We want all the questions, okay?
And one other thing I'll add to this is, what we see with the old way of buying technology is you're cutting off the benefits the cloud provides. That's the bottom line. And we watch these old contracts, the way they're set up, it can minor benefits, but up to the fundamentals of the cloud, and they take that away. And we want to avoid that as we go forward.
Right. Okay, what is the opportunity, right? My partners come to me day one, hey Jane, I want to be a partner at Amazon. How can I make money, right? Or is anybody even buying it? Do they really know and understand about AWS? Well, I went and updated my, well, first of all, who's even buying in public sector? This is just an eye chart of, obviously, we've got many more customers. Just a quick look at who's actually touching the cloud today, the AWS cloud, right? They may be doing a small workload, they may be doing a large workload, but they are already enjoying the benefits, the efficiencies, the scalability, which in turn, us as citizens are benefiting from. Did a little bit of research for you, third-party auditors. I love to gather this research from IDC as well as Gartner. Take a look at these statistics, folks. It's here to stay. When I started 7 years ago, went to visit some of my customers, and coming from old school, and I said, I'm so excited about AWS Cloud. Don't you want to get on this bandwagon? And they literally looked outside at the clouds and said, Jane, it's just a fad. It will go away soon, okay? 7 years later, I can say we're not a fad, all right? These statistics demonstrate that. And this is not me talking. This is IDC and Gartner. And I've put the references there. Go look them up. These are just readily available. You don't have to buy the reports or anything. So proof's in the pudding right there. Cloud procurement, obviously, when Dave and I started, we couldn't sell AWS to our government customers and our public education customers. We finally taught them what it meant to utilize it, but then we'd come full stop. They couldn't procure it. So Dave and I had to figure out what best practices can we do to help them to get there. Maybe I'm not pointing in the right direction. Okay, whoops.
You're going ahead.
Sorry. So why don't you speak to this one, Dave?
So I'm the guy who really dives into the, how are we going to make this procurement work? How are we going to make this buying approach work? So first, I think most people in the room, I'll just rattle off a couple of the things that we run into with government procurement especially. So risk adverse, takes time, 6, 12, 18 months, normal. Highly prescriptive. This is exactly what we want, and this is how we want to build it. Terms and conditions. All the standard terms and conditions have been around for 30 years for buying technology. Traditional security approaches, fixed pricing. So ultimately, it's working through taking these elements and saying, how do we bring the cloud into this? So, like for example, lengthy. The cloud is moving so fast right now. To wait 18 months, I was talking to a customer in North America not too long ago, we'll do the next thing in 18 months. 18 months is forever now in the cloud world, and why do you want to wait that long? And so we need to moving faster. It's allowing people to have access and do what they need to do rather than prescribing all of the details. So this is what we're trying to shift away from, and we're working with governments around the world to shift away from these sort of traditional approaches.
Awesome. And we'll get some other things as well. This is Dave's favorite chart, so I'm going to let him speak to it.
Okay, so we've done this before, obviously. So we kind of, there's a lot of lessons learned for us about how people adopt cloud. This is a journey. We talk about the cloud journey. And so we've broken it down to sort of 5 general categories around what governments or organizations need to go through. So I'll just start at the bottom. And what is the cloud? First thing is that's a challenge. We have to go in and explain how we operate. People think data center, or they think traditional IT, or I'm literally going to get boxes. And so that's the first step, is just understand it. And the best way to understand it is use it. So we have to do that. And we have to do that. That's not just the IT folks. I like to have procurement folks in the room, or legal folks in the room, or contracts folks in the room. You can get on and see it too, and use it.
So Dave, how do they get on and try it without having a contract vehicle? Because we're getting to the point where we got to have a contract vehicle, right? So cart and horse, how do they just log in and use it without that contract pathway?
First of all, that's a little bit of a surprise for some folks, is you can get online and use it right away. In fact, you can use it to the full extent of AWS without even talking to us. And we do have folks who do that. We've actually got governments who've come to us and said, we've already run our website on here and we never talk to anybody. So that's a way to do it. You can get on there and do it. So you can open up an account. They're a free tier. You don't have to pay for anything on there. You can use it and just understand it at the base level. And I've actually had legal folks actually use it in a really basic way, and it helps them think differently about it, and they understand it. And then you have a much better conversation about the cloud as you go forward.
Right. Policy? I want to speak to the policy.
You want to do that?
Yeah, because I want to bring up this example. So several of my partners have brought this to my attention already this morning, and I'm really proud. The state of Florida just passed legislation on a cloud first bill. And the language now states that they shall utilize cloud or review a cloud option first and foremost. The word shall is the key word there. And it has been a game changer in the state of Florida. State of Texas, same thing. Cloud must be looked at first as that option. So again, AWS Public Policy is out there helping you to shape these opportunities to help you work through these procurements. You're not alone in this. It's a very big challenge, right? So know that we're in the background helping you to overcome the challenges to meet your customers' needs to get to the cloud.
And related to policy also is just privacy and regulations around that. And Amazon provides tremendous offerings and services around that. But sometimes these policies have to be shifted a little bit to understand or take that under the umbrella. So we have to go in there and understand that. It's also what is policy and what isn't policy. There's plenty of people who say follow rules out there. We love this discussion where people say this is how we have to do it. Well, where's the policy? And so that's a piece that we have to work through too. So it's all learning. Security and compliance. Security and compliance is obviously probably the number one discussion point right in the beginning. Is this secure? And I think we've answered that question pretty.
I think we've answered the question that are we secure? Yes, and we have tons of documentation. Third-party auditors come in to talk about security. But I think this audience, would be interested in, because I know from a capture perspective, you receive documents all the time saying, here's my security policy. Can you please address this, AWS? How do we handle that today?
So we have dozens and dozens and dozens of certifications and accreditations. And so what it is sitting down and looking at it and say, how does this policy fit into what we provide? And we'll talk about the shared responsibility model in a little bit about how our security works, but it's sitting down and having the conversation rather than saying, do it this way. I think that's the most important part around it. And another important part we've learned about this, about security, is can you provide the capabilities to do this type of security? Not you do this type of security. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But just again, it's taking the time and getting the right people involved from a security perspective to be in the early discussions as you look at the buying process.
Obviously, we're going to talk more about procurement. I'll jump right into the culture. Who is the innovative thinker in your room? Find them. That's the person that you need to champion this effort. Because look, we all get up in the morning, go to work. They put the behemoth thing of, can you move us to the cloud? I'm going to retire next year. The governor's going to change. The president's changing. My staff will change. Do I have to be that guy? Yeah, you got to be that guy, okay? Or find the one in there that does that. It is about culture. It is about change management. Somebody has to be the change agent, because just like when we had virtualization, just like when, God help us, 40 years ago, the mainframe came in, those were disruptive technologies. Cloud is a disruptive technology. Be the leader. Be the leader in the room, not the follower. Follow the leader, okay, when it comes to cloud.
And it's also overcoming fear.
True.
I think, that's what we run into is people, the bottom line is you're going to take my job. No,
Right.
This is opening up different ways to do things. And you're not racking and stacking hardware anymore. You're actually building solutions for folks. And you still have to run an architecture. You still have to do the things that you were doing before, but you're not doing this, as we call it, the undifferentiated heavy lifting. But that is a shift for lots of different people, and you have to deal with that shift, and it has to be part of the discussions as you go forward.
You're also advancing your resume when you go get an AWS certification. So take a look at that. Broad adoption,
Well, that's what we're ending up with out of this. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Broad adoption. Yeah, we're a global market, or in the global ecosystem, but we are scratching the surface, right? When Dave took the international assignment, I think you worked the UKG Cloud 9 times, from here before he went truly global. But the fact now is we're touching in many, many, many countries, but just touching. So the point of that is the opportunity is ripe for the taking, ripe for the picking. You all in this room are on the ground floor of this disruptive technology that's going to change the way we as citizens in this public sector market live, work, and benefit from.
And one other thing I'll throw from an international perspective is there's some really cool stuff happening overseas. And I think there's lessons there. And so feel free to reach out to myself or our team if you're interested in what other countries have done. I mean, I know we've paired up Canada with Australia and having these different discussions. If you're interested in that, what they're doing overseas,
awesome.
I'm happy to do it.
So who does what in the cloud, right? We've heard of the NIST definitions, because now we're getting into formulating a procurement, right? Because I've seen lots of procurements where it's just cloud. Okay, that's a big scope. That can be professional services, managed services, resale. What does it really look like? Because we're going to get to that shared responsibility model, of which I know all of you are familiar with. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And the point of this, it's not really the AWS underlying infrastructure. It's think of it from the perspective of when you're buying software as a service. Matt's going to, can talk about AWS Marketplace. It's going out there to the marketplace, a piece of software that you used to buy on an annual license that cost a lot of money, and you didn't really know how much you needed, so you bought 1,000 licenses, only really needed 20, and now you've footed the bill for that, right? AWS Marketplace, go buy those 20 licenses, use them until you don't need to use them anymore, and turn them off. What do you think the cost differential of that is? It's magnanimous. Dave, what else about this slide?
So I'll get into the nitty-gritty because I just can't help getting into the procurement nitty-gritty. When telling your kids that you like procurement, it's always an interesting conversation. So I think one of the lessons out of this too is first, when you're talking about cloud, make sure you know what type of cloud you're talking about. I've been in rooms where we're talking past each other. And so that's our job to talk about here's how the structure works. But also, I think it's your job to understand what am I trying to buy? And they are different. And so I think the simplest one is terms and conditions for SaaS can be very different than terms and conditions for IaaS. And don't conflate the two. Jane and I have actually...
Why would they be different?
One's a subscription. This is a good... Yeah, it's good. Usually a SaaS is like a subscription service, and you have a model for that. And I think that's actually a model most governments are actually very comfortable with. When you get into IaaS and this hourly rate and these different types of services and this granularity, it's different. And you need different terms, and there's different responsibilities, who can do what. So there's a variation. I think the bottom line, Jane and I remember looking at an RFP, I won't say what state it was. We looked at this RFP, and they put it all into one big blob and made everybody agree to everything. And that's just, it's a non-starter. So it's understanding what you're looking at. I think that's the first lesson. If you're looking at building a buying mechanism or a procurement or whatever it is, you have to understand this.
So the net of this slide is the differentiation in the colors, meaning terms and conditions need to map up to this. Because if, as the provider, I can only do so many things in the transaction. I can't manage your data if that's not what I'm contractually supposed to do, right? But if you roll all that into one set of terms and conditions, nobody's successful, including you, the customer, okay? All right, successful well-built cloud procurement strategies. We work backwards from the customer at AWS. We are listening to what the needs are, what the challenges are. We advocate to modify our roadmap of service feature functionality if that's what it takes. We're doing the same thing with our procurement and public policy work. We want to help, again, to shape what those look like to do it. Performance-based. You can talk about these better than me. performance-based
Keep going. You're doing
thanks,
fine.
thanks. Performance-based. Many of the old school contracts are, I need a server with a 60 gigabyte drive,
You're not buying an asset. You have to think about that. You're not buying an asset. What you care about is what this thing is going to do for you for the application you're running.
Right.
And that's a big shift. And so specifying, we get all sorts of RFPs buying cloud, but we want exactly these types of things, literally down to the server type. It doesn't matter. You want the performance that this offering is going to provide. And do I need a big machine that's really video capable, or do I need something that's storage capable? And I can play with those. And so having that flexibility and ability to shift between those two is the critical part. And you want to focus on that performance part, not the hardware.
And the prioritization of the outcome, again, what are you trying to solve for? Don't just say, you know what, I need to refresh my hardware because it's time, the stuff's getting old. You know what, just I want to build for the massive hurricane that's coming that'll probably have to dump 10 of my servers. No, it's not that anymore. It's, I know I live in the hurricane zone, so I'm going to spin up what I need today and architect for what I need tomorrow, but not turn it up until I need it. So what does that procurement look like? It doesn't look like the traditional IT one. Because if it was traditional IT one, you'd buy 1,000 servers and put them in Nebraska where they don't get hurricanes. But of course, the state of Florida is not going to put their servers in Nebraska, and so now they're going to get blown away every time a hurricane comes through, right? So that's another example of a differentiation.
And another one is also, people tend to come in and I'm going to replicate what I have in a data center. I'm going to replicate it in the cloud.
Yeah.
Thinking I'm going to do the same thing, and you don't. It's a very different architecture model. And I'll give the simple example is auto scaling. You don't need to have 20 servers on and going. You can have 2 and just have the preparation going. So it's a different mindset as you go forward, and a procurement has to be flexible to handle that. Again, you don't want to cut off the benefits of the cloud.
So talking about the flexibility, Dave, and we get to this self-service pay-as-you-go thing, right? We're government. We firm fixed price buy, right? We lock in our budgets. We know what we can spend. This whole pay-as-you-go thing, that really puts a wrench in my buying. So how do we get through that? And also, I heard that AWS sort of, they keep adding those features, so those service level agreements and things can change. So how can I be assured that I'm always going to get what I pay for,
We
right?
got a couple slides coming up.
Yeah,
on that
okay,
right
all
there.
right, okay. Stakeholders. Again, who's the innovator in the room? Who's the leader? All of these people. You can find them in one of these rooms, but find them. And then they need to be your advocate.
And here's from a procurement perspective. We walk in, we talk to the IT folks on a pretty regular basis, or the business folks, and they go, great, we're really excited, we want to go do this. And the first thing I say is, you need to bring these other folks to the table. You need to have procurement in this room learning with you as you're doing this. You need to have contracts in the room. You need to have legal in the room. They all need to be together. It's almost like create a little center of excellence or a tiger team, whatever you want to call it, to be together and learn this together. Because traditional government kind of, here's the business need, great, let's throw it over to procurement or throw it over to contracts. And if they don't understand it, they're gonna go their traditional way. And then you end up with all of a sudden unhappy on our side, your end users.
And you've just extended your whole timeline to
Exactly.
close the deal, right? I mean, the procurement person, get them in the room first. Teach them first, and the lawyer, okay? Because once the procurement person and the legal person knows how to spin up an AWS account and sees the flexibility, the agility, the elasticity of the utilization of cloud, they're there to help you to stay secure, safe, and to save money. That's what procurement and legal does. So once they're on the bandwagon of understanding how this thing works called cloud, they're going to champion the business all day long. But if you go to them last, it's an uphill climb, right? Because now they think you're just getting one over on them, right? Include them first.
And ultimately, the pattern that I've seen around the world is the contract's put in place, the buying mechanism's put in place. The first one doesn't work or works very poorly. The second one gets better because they learn the lessons. And
Yep.
my job right now is to skip the first step. And doing these steps is exactly how you do that.
And we've been around this block enough, we should be able to skip the first one.
Yep.
All right, so how can AWS be procured today? Well, through a lot of sweat and tears and hard knocks and, just a lot of grit. Folks can buy directly from us. As Dave said, you can click through the online terms and conditions, enjoy the benefits of the free tier, put your credit card in there, buy AWS, okay? Many of us in public sector obviously can't do that. So we have a new contract center, which I'll give you the link in a minute, that identifies the contracts that we do have. We are now, through our partners on GSA Schedule 70, SOUP 5, Army Accent, statewide vehicles like NASPO Value Point, U.S. Communities. We have direct contracts with some of our enterprise customers in the higher ed space. Some of our government customers have direct agreements with us. Then maybe they have a partner contract or a traditional contract for professional services or managed services. That can work as well.
I think the takeaway from me on this is also know what you're asking for and do the research on it. There's sometimes the folks who, I want to go direct. Okay, great, we can go direct, but understand it. Let's spend the time on that subject, understand what's around. That may be the best approach, maybe an indirect approach is the best approach. But spend the time on it, don't assume ahead of time the best way to do it, or say this is the only way to do it.
And also, again, knowing what your customer needs, right? Because if they only need, say you have the technical capabilities in-house, and you really just need somebody to resell an AWS account to you, then just ask for resell. Why go through the pain of all the extra things that go in a managed service contract when you just need access to the account and go to work with your own team? But then there's the framework contracts where they're licensed to hunt, right? I have another group on my team called the Contracts Acceleration Programs team, that their whole job is to work with the partners that have been awarded these license to hunt contracts, because sometimes they fall by the wayside. Everybody works real hard to earn the award, but then we get busy doing the one-off deals, and they need to be reminded that, hey, that contract path is already done and won. Let's utilize that contract path. Let's not keep reinventing the wheel with another RFP, Dave, right? Okay. Obvious contract types, sole source. 5 years ago, Dave could still squeeze in a sole source. But can you do that very often anymore?
Actually, there's a few places we're talking about it. It's out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still out there for cloud?
I mean, internationally it all works a little differently, but
all right. So you can still make it happen. Framework we discussed, cooperatives, and existing service contracts. In the state of New York, as an example, the New York City folks, they buy directly from us based on our Texas DIR contract, believe it or not. But that contract does not include professional services. So we reach back into the state of New York where they have other professional services contracts already on the books for years. And those partners that hold those contracts can then get their professional services done. Maybe it's a managed service. So think creative, right? I mean, that's what we do all day long to make this happen.
Think creative, but also think simple. I think one of the most successful contracts out there around the world is UKG Cloud. And we've been through...
You can say that after 9 times?
It's a good contract. It took a lot of work. We've been through a lot of iterations of that, but we've all learned, both sides, the government and AWS and our partners, and it's a learning process. But I think the bottom line of that contract is they kept it simple. Yeah. It's the cloud provider services, it's the cloud provider's pricing, and the access is easy. And that is why it's been successful. Other contracts we've seen and other frameworks on here, cooperative, they kind of go through this long process of this control and upfront and hoops to jump through and processes. That's difficult, and especially when you're moving very quickly in the cloud, taking that element away makes the contract not work as well.
So that UKG Cloud contract, it allows for them to look at what the AWS pricing is on the website and maybe a discount off of that. Is that how it works?
All our pricing's there, all of our services, and they're accepted as is.
As is.
It's not trying to force them into a box that's created to compare cloud vendors. It's just, here's the way it works, and they have a very simple mechanism. In fact, the procurement organization is very hands-off on it. They allow the individual organizations, whether it's central government or regional or council governments, to sort of use their own rules and their own judgment about how they do it. And I think that creates a very flexible contract. Some organizations aren't quite ready yet. That's fine. Others are, and they'll move forward.
Perfect. Whoa! I only did one button. Can you guys help with that slide? It's not doing anything now. Folks in the back? We can probably do this without the slides, but
Yeah, we can.
it would be nice to have them back.
Do you want to talk about the partners and just start
Yes,
recording that?
yeah, that was the next slide.
Okay,
Importance of partners. I can do this one in my sleep. Partners, yeah, that's our scaling mechanism, right, folks? We got to scale. Partners are the key to our scaling mechanism. Like I said, even if we have a direct contract, you know, half the time they'll come in, they'll buy, they'll dip their toe in the water, and then they'll say, but you know what, I want to move my Oracle workloads over or a specific application, and hey, Amazon, can you move that for us? We have a very small professional services arm, and they're really in a consultative fashion to, again, do the education of the cloud. Okay.
Yeah, I want to back up a couple slides.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do it, Jane, now.
There we go. Okay. So a partner can work alongside somebody who has a direct contract vehicle, or they can take the whole pie, right? So here's some examples of where there's AWS. We provide the infrastructure, right? We provide training for both our end users and our partners to get them strong. We obviously have a robust support organization. We encourage all of our partners and users to take care of that support, take advantage of that support, and again, the marketplace. Because we have many technology companies that want to be able to sell their wares as a subscription and or just it's more valuable just to hang it out there on a marketplace where folks can just go buy, right? They don't need to come through anybody else. Just go click through and buy. Where we've seen true value add, I always tell my partners, how are you differentiating yourself in this market? What is your value add? This is not just a resell one and done pass through, right? That's old school IT. This is a technology sale. And our customers need and desire our partners' help to get them into that next mile, okay? Whether that's an expertise in billing, because AWS, you buy not only an EC2 instance, but then you throw in a little bit of Aurora or log into some workspaces accounts, and then you have your load balancers, you have whatever else. All that comes in as line item billing. It can get pretty dense. So many of our partners have created their value add as a billing person. Service desk, governance. Governance is huge, right? Many governments come to me. They want to do something on AWS. They've been living with the 100-year-old policy. Our partners go in and actually help them rescope those governance policies. Government can't get to the new technology without adjusting their governance policies.
Governance, I can't stress how important governance is. Whether you do it yourself or you hire a partner to do it, governance is critical because you have to manage in a different way. You know, like I said earlier, kind of traditional is up front, you jump through the hoops, everything's checked off, and then you use. Here it's almost use, and you observe and you monitor and you understand what people are doing. Are they optimizing correctly? Are they doing the security correctly? But you let them use it with kind of in a hands-off fashion. You need a different governance model to operate that way. And if you want to use the cloud effectively, you have to have the good governance model. And we've seen contracts where we'll figure out the governance model later. And all of a sudden, the contract is sitting there, great, you got these great legal terms and conditions, but you don't know how to actually use it. And that's, again, a poor customer experience for everybody.
And the no-brainers, of course, are application development, support, you know, big lift and shift migrations, and then optimization. Partners, listen, I can talk to you all day about what the partners can do for you. We have competency programs now that help them to differentiate themselves, that demonstrate that they're experts at a particular thing or things. That's a whole nother session on how we grow our partners, but they can be integral to your procurements. Okay.
And just make sure you have access to multiple of these different partners. Again, I see, we'll just get one partner to come help us and we'll be fine. It's not going to work.
Right.
You need that sort of network of partners and that expertise. There's so many different ways to use AWS, and there's lots of great knowledge out there. You want to access a broad variety of those types of vendors.
And many of those procurements, you might be saying, well, I want a single award. Well, if you're going to do a single award, again, make sure you know exactly what your customer needs are. Because if you do a single award and it goes to a partner, that partner's got to be able to deliver on all that, right? And yeah, you put the scope in there, but how many times has that scope kind of creeped? And then the partner says, I really need to bring in, somebody else, or somebody else has that expertise. Know what your customer needs, and so that you can get the right, or have it be a multiple award so that you can assure you've got all the right players in on that contract to do what you need to do. It takes so long to put these procurements together. You want to get it right on the outcome, okay? All right, that's our public sector customer set today that we consider in our ecosystem of folks. The partner role. Today, when I develop a partner, I am vigilant about, can they sell an AWS solution? Can they architect an AWS solution? Can they execute on that solution? You know how old school consulting partners, they go out and they just had to travel and sit there and give great advice, right? They're very good at it. Who comes behind that and executes on it? The next vendor. Well, in the cloud world, that creates more challenges, right? From a procurement perspective, old school, it's like, wait a second, I don't want to help write that RFP for them, Dave, because then I might not be able to bid on the work, right? Again, that's a procurement strategy you don't want anymore, because this partner may be the guy to help you to do the whole kitchen sink. They can assess your environment, they can help you migrate it, and they can support it. So again, going back to clearly understand what your requirements are. Then the last two things, can they support it? If your partner can't do, or whoever's going to provide it for you, cannot do all four of those things, and I would encourage you to ask that partner if they are fully enabled to sell it, architect it, execute on the architecture, and support it, then you come back to us and say, we either need to team them up with another partner to get a full scoped solution, or we need to go back to the drawing board, okay? Those four things are super important.
Last thing, just real quick, this is for the couple of international folks in the room, but just understanding about currency, how AWS works with currency and the invoicing process with other currencies. Localization, rules around language and how language works. These are all issues that we pop up in the international space and how that works. So again, it's worth that deep dive with partners and with us as we go forward.
They can be huge challenges in procurement. So just bringing it to your attention. Partner models. We're banging this because it is important, right? The SaaS model versus the infrastructure model versus the ISV. Maybe your procurement is for a tool, and it's an ISV tool that maybe there's 100 different ones that can solve the problem. Does the procurement reflect that? Okay? We talked about resell, consulting, planning and assessment. I really encourage for the procurement to put the planning and assessment and the execution of that planning and assessment all up together. Would you agree with that strategy?
I would agree with that strategy.
Good. All right, even globally, good. Managed services. So managed services are, you take care of everything for them, right? I obtain the AWS account, and I do all the technical work in the account. Maybe I've developed an application layer that the customer can utilize, but the customer never gets into the AWS account. You're providing a total package service for that customer. It may not be the only way that customer is buying, but that's a managed service. And at AWS, we have many managed service providers in our partner ecosystem, but we also offer, one of our competencies is an AWS certified managed service provider, where they've actually gone through a third-party external audit, 300 questions long, to determine the true capabilities of the services that they provide. They're listed out on the website. But some folks get confused of, do you have to be an AWS managed service provider in order to have the capability to do this for me? Of course not. Many of you in the audience are managed service providers in old school IT. Take the knowledge that you have from that, just do it in the cloud, powered by AWS.
And make sure a contract or a framework or a buying mechanism allows these elements to be included in there.
Right.
The different vendors who provide this, whether it's a small partner or a very large SI, whatever it is, this needs to be there coupled up with accessing AWS and the infrastructure.
Awesome. Okay, cloud procurement, the key considerations.
So this is all the stuff we spend time on. So what we've got here Just several kind of just basic examples, just to kind of give you a flavor of what you need to be thinking about. So we're just going to walk through a couple of them, and this is not everything. It's just some of the things, but we want to make sure you understand this as you're thinking about a procurement or a buying mechanism approach, or whatever way you want to do it. First, so innovation. How does innovation, how do you accept new innovation as it's coming on? Traditional contracts would be, it's locked for 6 months, a year, 2 years.
Or you have to come tell me every time it changes.
Or you want to make a change, you got to come in and go through some type of review process or something like that, and then you can add that element onto the SKU list. The cloud is moving too fast for that. We are making changes every day. So this slide is just showing these are the sort of the innovations, the upgrades that we're adding every day. We're doing 3 or 4 a day. And for us to go into a contract and do this, or a partner to go in and do this, just allow people to have access to this change. And remember, these changes are done around the world for everybody. So these are not sort of, do I have to test this out? We've spent the time on that. Our reputation works off of that, so we have to.
And remember, this is all that we do. We don't have a breadth of other types of offerings. So we don't want to mess this up, right? This is our business. We want to make the technology better according to the customer feedback that we're getting. So allow the procurement to accept these refreshes as they happen. That's key.
Yep. Governance. I already sort of hit on governance, but I cannot stress enough to sit down and figure out the model of how you're going to govern the contract after it's done. And understanding, first of all, do I need an outside provider to help me? Do I need to build an inside team to do this? And then where are the tools to do this? There are partner tools to do this, like Jane mentioned. We have our own tools. AWS Organizations can allow you to say, I want to narrow the parameter of what my end users use, or I want to use a certain security approach. All of these things need to be understood and then built into how it's bid and then how it's governed afterward. Because poor governance, it just becomes a very difficult process.
Even the AWS Marketplace has some really cool tools, one of which is called Service Catalog. Many of the procurement officers come back and say, but I only want my customer to have access to this software, this software, this software. Service Catalog can define that tool set that your customers get access to, and therefore, again, be able to just buy it as they need it and no longer need those big, expensive, long, locked-in ELAs.
Pricing. This is always a fun subject because there's 2 areas that we run into. One is take your pricing and fit it into our model, which is something we can't do. Just straight out, we can't put our pricing is the way our pricing works. So embrace the model, use the model. There's the benefits of the model. Second, don't try to compare pricing, like SKU lines. I was just in a conversation.
You mean I don't get a discount because I'm a special snowflake?
We have discounts.
Okay.
Just they work in a different manner, and that's another one we have to work through.
Okay.
So, but SKU lines is people. I literally talked to a guy in Canada who sat down and tried to compare SKU lines between different CSPs, and his head was hurting at the end because they're different, and that's okay, allowing the difference. So what we recommend in that case is don't try to compare by SKU lines or lines. By the way, we have 20,000 line items in a single region pricing list, so trying to do it doesn't make any sense. Scenarios, one approach. Build out a scenario. Here's what I want to accomplish. How would you architect this in the cloud, and how much would it cost? There you're going to get a better idea of how this works. So that's the type of thinking you have to have around pricing rather than sort of the traditional approach that we find in so many former or older IT contracts.
And for those, because firm fixed price is still around. It has not gone away. We haven't quite accomplished that, but that's okay because we have a lot of managed service providers out there that have figured this out, how they get smart on using the simple monthly calculator on AWS website, or maybe the TCO calculator on the AWS website. They can judge per the customer's requirements what the anticipated spend is, and through our billing alerts, our governance models, through AWS Organizations, they can send up their flag alerts that, hey, customers already spent 75% of the spend. We got to take some action here. Maybe we need to go talk to them about a refresh on their purchase order. But so firm fixed price has not gone away, but we can help you with the tools to come up with what the anticipated utility price is. You bake that in to your firm fixed price, and you should be golden, okay? Because we know that hasn't gone away yet, but this is absolutely gold.
All right, shared responsibility model. This is a real critical part of our approach. So we own everything on the security side, from the fence to the building, to access to the building, to the infrastructure that's running. And in the case of our compute EC2, above that is, there's the hypervisor. Above that is you run the security of the application or the workload you're doing. And that's a tremendous set of power. You own it. It's not, you're not relying on somebody else to do it. You get to do it. So the way we simplify it is, we're responsible for the security of the cloud. The end user who's in there is responsible for the security in the cloud. So you get to use the IAM that you need. If you want to encrypt data, we'll talk about that in a minute. You get to do that. You get to own who accesses and how it works. Now, from a procurement perspective, that changes things.
Right.
The simple examples, we get these RFPs that say, the CSP is responsible for the security of my data. All of a sudden it gets challenging because it's a shared responsibility model, and that's the benefit, and that's the advantage is that shared responsibility model. So it's those little nuances as you're writing an RFP to understand how this works and then incorporating it into the document or the framework or the mechanism that you're building.
Terms and conditions are tied to this slide tremendously, right? These blocks really determine where the liability clause fits. So again, depending on what the customer needs, this will really help you have that conversation with the procurement officer to determine the appropriate terms and conditions.
Okay.
One of which is encryption. And every time. And we used to do a live demo at this point, but we're not able to do that today. There's a little block in the console, the AWS console, that says, would you like to encrypt your data? Check. Well, why wouldn't, those RFPs say they want the CSP to do it. Well, why wouldn't you give me the choice, Dave?
Gives you the control. And if you want to bring your own encryption technology, if you want to own your own keys, you can do that yourself. It's your option.
Why
and it
is
all
that
depends
important?
on the workload.
You don't want to do it all for me? That's old school, right? That's old school. Bring in the behemoth to do everything for you. You may still want that. That's okay. That's a managed service. But guess what? You may have the capabilities in-house. Maybe you have ultra-sensitive data that you don't want anybody else touching, right? You want to have that control so you can choose whether or not it's encrypted. Another example, audits.
Audits. Traditional approach is folks want to go in the data center and see it. And that's sometimes it's policy, sometimes it's just that's the way we do it. And you think about it, we have millions of active customers every month. If we let everybody come in the data center, that's actually a security issue.
Yeah.
And we don't know. I've worked here for 5 years. I don't know where the data centers are in Northern Virginia. I don't know where they are. It's a need to know. And that's how we operate with that. So it's one of those things where the auditing is really done not at the building level. You don't need to go see the blinking lights in the building. You use our auditing certificates, you use our tools, those kinds of things. That's where the power is. And you have access to everything.
Third-party auditors come into our data centers on an annual basis, if not semi-annual basis, to do those reports. They're called SOC 2, SOC 3 reports. All of these reports, the ones that are under NDA, you can retrieve through your artifacts on the AWS console in your AWS account. For the ones that aren't under NDA, you could go out to the AWS compliance site and download the reports right there. I know SOC 3 is available without an NDA, but the other ones you can get right off of your AWS account. Even better for those that really want to see the blinky lights, we've actually put together a video and a synopsis of what does our data center incorporate. How does the power grid, the water and cooling work? That's all out on our website now. It's fantastic. They'll give you a virtual tour, so you can get a touch and feel a little bit of it. But believe you me, I wouldn't want a million customers walking through and accidentally touch, right? And neither would you.
What's this button do? Yeah.
Service level agreements. Go ahead.
We've only about a minute left, but a couple other areas. SLAs. People are used to sort of setting an SLA in an RFP. You build your SLA using AWS. If you want to make something incredibly available, there's ways to do that. It all depends on what you need. So our SLAs are done at component level. They are done at the EC2, the S3, the RDS level. That's where they're done. They're not done at overall because We want to give you the flexibility to build the SLA you need. That is a different thing in terms and conditions, procurement, all those fun things.
Right, because they always want to put service level agreements in the terms and conditions. We have foundational ones, everything else is built up. We probably beat that to death about terms and conditions, so
Yeah,
let's skip that one. How can we help you? All right, we have this great website, How to Buy. Tremendous valuable resources. Basically everything we've talked about today you can find on this website, How to Buy. So please go out and utilize that. Also, one that has just been released from our contracts folks is the newly revised, the AWS Public Sector Contract Center. They did some incredible tools in there, so now you can search more of the available contracts that are held both directly, indirectly from our partners, federal, state, local, education. Please note that. All of this information will be out on the YouTube in a day or so. Happy to get you more information on those, but please visit, if you do nothing else, visit those two websites, okay?
Capture and proposal support, excuse me. Capture and proposal support, we do have a federal, a state and local, and an international team out there. So feel free, if you're on the government side or if you're on partner side, feel free to reach out and we're happy to work with you on a variety of different things. Resources, we have white papers. We've spent a lot of time. If you need a good bedtime reading document, about 40 pages on cloud procurement. It's a great read. It's a wonderful read. But there's some really good resources out there. And then finally, Jane and I are always available.
So jot down our emails. Again, all of our resources, Marketplace, our contracts folks, they'll stand in the back of the room so you can see and identify who they are. Dave and I will all step outside the room. So if you have questions, we'll be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you.